Hi there, good evening everybody. My name's Sian. I've travelled tonight from Glossop. I'm not from Glossop, I'm living in Glossop now. My husband Tim is over there. My name's Sian Griffiths, and as I was introduced, I was, when I was working, a firefighter. Marvellously, I've been retired for over 3 years now. Who knew? When I joined the fire service in 1985, basically I joined because I needed a job. I was a young woman. I had a son. Well, I still have a son, but he's 37 now, when I was 20. And then I realised after that I needed a job. I'm not an academic. I've got a few GCSEs and that's about it. So I needed a job that wasn't going to require any qualifications. And that was the fire brigade. However, since they've got more women in, funnily enough, they've put more and more hurdles in place to try and stop, I think, women. But anyway, certain people getting in, but we still managed to get into the fire service. However, when I joined, as Helen said, there were actually 5 women in the fire service. There were 11 of us at training school. Six of us made it out, and then we made it to 11. Now there's nearly 400 women, but that is in over 30 years, and there is still over about 5,000 firefighters. So that's where we are. So that's an indication of really where women are in society. I'm sure I don't have to tell you anything about that. But so why am I here today? Who am I? I've got no statistics. I've got nothing like that. I could barely put any notes together because I don't know about you, but my head is all over the place with this. Everything I read about it, I agree with. Most of it's already been said. It's been said again and again, very eloquently. With anger, with temperament, in all sorts of ways. But basically, where I come from, I feel it's an innate feeling, and there's a lot of feelings going on here, isn't there, about how it feels when there's unfairness, when you're told, and this is what I was told quite a lot in the fire service, no, Sian, what you don't understand is, then it's got to be like this, it's got to be like that. Once upon a time I said, look, quite early on I used the term firefighter. Now this is quite a big radical thing. Still nowadays people refer to firemen, sometimes feminists do it, school teachers do it. Now it really gets my goat. It seems a very small thing, but it has a huge significance. And now we're talking about terminology a lot, aren't we? We might even need an O-level or an A-level in it, if those of you know what those are. Because it's all out there, what you call people, misgendering people, all that sort of stuff. So then, use the term firefighter, and somebody told me once, well, Sian, why do you think the term fireman is an insult? Honestly, I didn't have to reply. It was a look from me. I said, and this was quite early on, and I said, well, why do you think that it might be? He said, well, you know, if you're surely being compared to a man, and as he was explaining, and I can see it in my head, I was in fire gear, we were returning from a shout, he was more senior than me, and he was just chatting to me. And so I had to do it with kindness. I had to not push people away all the time. So not everybody welcomed us women with open arms. I'm sure you can imagine that. There were times when I was at work, when I finally got through training school and everything like that, that I would go into a room, a mess room, and people would get up and walk out. So you either walked away from that, or you kept going, or you thought. I mean, one of the things. Sorry, I'm going to go to and fro here. But one of the things that that made me more determined was that I was a mother. That when I was 20, I had a child. And when I went to training school, I was 24. And the one thing I had that none of these men around me who were telling me, should I be there, shouldn't I be there, was I good enough, wasn't I good enough, none of them had given birth. And they were never going to be able to. And I had. And I was there to ensure that I provided for my son and myself. That was, that was my motivation at the time. So. And then, I get into the fire service, and I was very, very lucky. I went to a fire station where they were very, very supportive of me, and they weren't all sexist pigs. And we did have quite a good time, and so they were very supportive. And what I was encouraged to do was learn the rules, and I went for promotion. Didn't really particularly want to be an officer. I wanted to drive the fire engines. I didn't do that for some time. And what I learned, and my governor at the time, my station officer, he was a trade union, he was the union rep, the fire brigade union rep, officers rep. And he used to tell me, if you want to break the rules, you've got to know the rules. So that's what I learned, basically. And then, in a way, that knowledge is power. And then I got more and more involved. I contacted every woman that joined the fire service at the time. And all of this is relevant to where we are now, because we weren't encouraged to talk to the other women, as we're not encouraged to talk to each other at the moment. I wasn't encouraged to talk to them. I wanted to talk to all the other women. Now, if they were okay and they were well established, it was fine. They would talk to me. If they weren't, they would talk to me on the phone without anybody witnessing it. If we saw each other on the fire ground, they would keep their distance from me, because when they went back to station, they would be given the Spanish Inquisition about what were you talking to her for? What do you need to talk to her for? One woman on our own, we're not so much of a threat. Two of us together, oh my God, we're going to change the world, you know. And so they were very insecure, and they probably still are, a lot of them. It is a lot better, but there's still a huge way to go, in my opinion. So basically, we did get a group of women together. Originally, we just played volleyball. And so one of the very first woman, Sue Batten, who now lives down in Somerset, doesn't have email, mobile phone, not interested. But she's a really lovely woman. And like us all, we're all a bit batty. But she used to get us together for volleyball, and that was quite... There was no other reason then, you know, it wasn't political, it wasn't against the men, heaven forbid, and all that sort of stuff. So, and then from there, I think the union saw the benefit of us having a committee so that they could interrogate us for our views and put them forward for whatever reason. So in 1989, I joined in 85, 1989 we had a women's committee, the inaugural meeting, and it was in the old County Council building in London. And when I joined, Ken Livingstone, for those of you that know him, he was the leader of the GLC. He was trying to change the world. And really, that's why there was more women joined then, basically, because the reason I joined, there was a poster in my local community centre where I was working as a playgroup leader, and it had an artist's impression of a black man and a woman in firefighting clothing, obviously because they didn't have any real people to take pictures of, like the olden days. So we did have support, so that empowered you to, you know, do different things and challenge things. So we did get a women's committee together, and we did meet regularly. This was and it's still going now in whatever form it is. So, and we challenged all sorts of things, and that was before we had a BEAM committee, Black and Ethnic Minority Committee, LGBT committee, and what I will say is that the women's committee was the catalyst for all those other committees as well, and for the other interests. And so as a women's committee, we encouraged those members as well to join together, and that we linked together as well, and that anybody that was seen as different or marginalised from whatever group were able, they had a point of contact. If they didn't feel comfortable about contacting the people within their workplace, then they could contact one of the group, even if it wasn't from their group. So we did have issues with firefighters that were Muslim, and if they grew a beard and hair and all sorts of things. And over the years, these were challenged, and they were actually overcome, you know, or there were ways through it. But it didn't happen by accident. It never happened without having to make a big fuss, a big fight. It never happened by asking politely or nicely. And so over the years, I was, because I was part of that women's committee, and because I'm a bit gobby, and I'm quite tall, and that I made friends with all sorts of people, and people saw me as an ally. So men who didn't feel comfortable about coming out in their workplace came out to me, and even my husband here, who was a firefighter as well, black firefighters, you know, gay firefighters, and trans firefighters. So we've had right across the board. So none of that is a problem, you know, really, until now. It's become such an issue that I never expected it to. And I know that there are a lot of people that say that as well. So my entry into this, really, you know, I've got I did have a goddaughter. I've now got a godson. You know, we were at one of the first, Tim photographed one of the first weddings with a firefighter. Trans is now retired. You know, there's all sorts of different combinations. None of that was an issue like it's become now. So I do wonder, basically, what the motivation is and whose real motivation is behind all this, because it's blown out of all proportions, in my opinion. So, am I doing all right for time at the moment? Yeah. And where are we now? So what started me going? I was a member of the Women's Equality Party because I thought it was quite a good idea at the time. I'd already moved up to near Manchester, a place called Marple Bridge, which is apparently is posh, I was told. I didn't realise that. So we were there for a year. We're now in Glossop. And I went to the meeting there and I thought it was quite good. And then there was the issue with Heather Brunskell-Evans, if that's right, last year. So that sort of, I was a bit interested in that, and I thought, and straight away, they seemed to drop her, dismiss her out of hand, that you couldn't be critical without, that's it, well, you know, it's like a real hot potato. So there was that. And then I was, as I am, a bit antagonistic. I was reading stuff and posting stuff on Facebook, how dare I, at my age, bloody hell. And then I had a woman firefighter tell me that, trans women are women. The penny will drop one day, like it dropped with me when you explained to me why we shouldn't use the term fireman. Now, I couldn't see how that was similar, but it did make me think a bit more hard and fast about these things. And then I thought, right, I need to join or get involved with some sort of local feminist group. So I joined the Manchester Feminist Network Fire Brigade site. God, they asked me a lot of questions about terminology and TERFs and cis and do I understand. I knew none of this. I mean, this wasn't that long ago. I know quite a lot now. And so there was a lot of Q&A there, so I had to do a bit of homework about that. And then whilst I found that some of my friends weren't sympathetic to how I was feeling, there were people that were. So my friends that felt confident enough on Facebook would chastise me and say it was compromising our friendships. And there were others that were messaging me on Facebook Messenger secretly saying, oh, I really agreed with that, but I didn't say it out loud, basically. So much, my friend's daughter, who's now 40, taught Amy Challoner and told me that on Facebook Messenger in 2015. So there's all sorts of, I'm sure you are well and know, interesting stuff out there. So, and then obviously I'll link to Women's Place UK and all sorts of angry lesbians on YouTube. That's quite marvellous. And so, and you know, all that sort of stuff, and trying to get on board with it all, and finding friends. But what I found was that the best way to be is honest about this, because really the bottom line for me is, and I remember being in the fire service. I remember standing in Clerkenwell. I worked at Clerkenwell Fire Station, lived in London all my life, and apart from the last 2 years. And I was in I was in my normal uniform, which is shirt and trousers and sometimes ties, which I hated and stuff like that. And I would be told I wasn't feminine. And I would say to them, well, what do you mean by feminine? I've got a womb. How much, you know, I've got, is that, so what? I'm masculine because I'm wearing the same clothes as you. What makes it? And this before any of this. So I'd have these conversations and you could see them go, oh, God. And somebody else would say, why did you start this off? You know? And, oh, God. And so I think it was, and I remember one of the guys said, oh, I don't know why women wear those bloody Dr. Martens. I said, I expect it's because they're bloody more comfortable than those things. Stiletto. I said, have you ever tried them? And anyway, so it's that sort of thing. What is feminine and what is masculine? Because, yes, when I was in my uniform, when I was young, I was often mistaken for a boy. And that was quite fun, you know. I even had women come right up to me. Women are a bit faced, a bit, you know. bold sometimes, and challenging. And I would be with other men, and I said, please tell her that I'm a woman, and they thought it was quite funny, you know, and all these sort of things. But it didn't bother me that they thought that, you know, it's just one of those things. So I think we are where we are today, where I think we really do need to challenge this. So much so today has been taken up, not with writing what I was going to say today, but challenging the Executive Council of the Fire Brigades Union. So the Fire Brigades Union, I don't know if you know, through the Trade Union Congress, was it week before last, there were 3 unions that abstained from the motion 41 on the Gender Recognition Act and the proposed changes. Most of them just, yeah, you know, we'll go along with that. It sounds like a good idea. They've not consulted any of their women, as far as I know, not officially. I think most women don't know what's going on. They don't, you know, understand because it's so complicated, and they don't want to be seen to not be part of the woke folk or on trend or transphobic or be called turfy McTurfface or all those sort of horrendous things, you know, heaven forbid. But if we allow this to happen, it's going to be much, much worse. And so much so, I asked my friend to support something we were doing, and she said, well, no, I don't, you know, trans people have it bad enough and we don't want the bastards to make it worse for them. And us women, we're used to suffering abuses, so we'll just deal with it. And honestly, yeah, no, and this is a woman who held hands with people at Greenham Common and all sorts of stuff. I am shocked and stunned, as Billy Connolly would say. So, yeah, and so I do think you need to speak out where you feel confident. I do think you need to be honest about it, how it makes you feel, because everybody else is talking about their bloody feelings, aren't they? And that actually a woman is not just a feeling. There are things that happen to us that don't happen to men. And to have the upshot is, the final thing I want to say is, I just don't like men telling me what to do. My husband will obviously support that statement. And, you know, I have given birth to a son. I am married to a man. I have worked with them for over 30 years, and I've had some great relationships with them. But somebody telling me what a woman is, and I'm not a woman, and we can't talk about our vaginas or our periods or our miscarriages or what happens to us and how we should dress and how we should look, and are you going to really eat that biscuit, and haven't you got a fat arse, and all that sort of stuff to undermine us. We've got to fight back. So that's all I'll say. Thank you very much.